All right, here we have yet another bottle episode. A few interesting things happen in this one, though. Like the Federation attempting to test a replacement for warp drive that is something that's a very specific, special kind of faster than light travel where you push the ship using soliton waves through space at a faster than light speed. The fundamental principles work completely differently to warp travel, and obviously for many purposes, soliton wave propulsion is completely unfeasible. However, things that have a regular, carefully planned route, you know what? It works. And the idea was for it to be a cheaper and easier way of moving cargo in bulk from point A to point B. And you know what? In the end, the idea actually proved to be kind of successful. Carefully designed ships that are, in fact, configured properly can actually survive being pushed through space by a soliton wave. Because that was actually the main thing, is that the soliton waves are high energy, and you have to have a very carefully configured shielding system to catch the wave instead of getting thwapped by the wave. And if you don't have the shield just right, it'll rip your ship apart instead of pushing it through space at warp speed. Because again, that's the big issue with soliton waves. They're traveling at warp speed, and anything hitting your ship traveling at warp speed is going to put a lot of stress on the ship. And if the wave proves to be somewhat unstable, then the shielding configuration needs to shift in order to compensate for the changes in the wave. Which, easier said than done. Anyways, so what else we got in this episode? Because, let's face it, testing an experimental technology, real easy plot hook. It's like, oh, yes, Starfleet Command needs a vessel to assist with testing a new technology. Please report to X location at Y time in order to assist with the efforts. Super easy plot hook. Honestly, it's such a super easy plot hook that it works for almost any faction in the Star Trek universe. Just tweak the details slightly. Like, oh, it's not Starfleet Command, it's the Klingon High Council, blah, blah, whatever, who cares? Dum, dum, dum. Anyways, mention the soliton wave stuff. So the subplot with this one, they actually put in a thing with Alexander and Worf, so that they have something in here other than the soliton wave, and that takes up a whole lot of time for the thing. Now, that's another thing about this. It's interesting is that this is one of those episodes where they took the time, because let's face it, the explanation for how the soliton wave project was going on was something that gave them a reason to sit around and wait for hours. So you have to have the TV show the viewer something other than Picard staring at his computer screen in his ready room while he reads reports. So we got this drama with Miss Kyle and Alexander. See, Miss Kyle is a character that I think we only saw in this one episode. New ground, and yeah, just new ground. And Alexander is basically being, a rebellious child, and Miss Kyle doesn't really understand what the heck is going on with him, and her efforts to try to get him to behave aren't working, so she decides she wants to talk to Worf about it. And, Worf realizes that Miss Kyle is actually being, genuine, sincere, and honest about everything. And Worf, yeah, comes to decide that, you know what, it's time for Daddy to show his son tough love. Well. Anyway, honestly, that's really not all of that interesting. It's like there's a whole bunch of things in here that are minor details and tidbits, which, if you were going to borrow this for a story where one of the player characters has a child or something, you would probably tweak all of the details to be something different so it's not the same thing. Although, I do have to wonder what a Corbin Gilvo is. Because this is one of those things where they casually name drop an alien life form that no one's ever seen or talked about in any other episode. Here, we actually see one because we have it come up in the Nagus. Yeah, some sort of extraterrestrial life form. Anyways, I don't even think Alexander saw one in person. I think he was just looking at a picture of one or something. Wait a second. Brentalia. Cryonian tiger. See, it's like, I remember that there was a planet mentioned in a animated series episode. Uh, Dragons, right. That was, anyway, one had dragons on it. Oh yeah, I just mentioned that it exists. Dragon. Let's see here. Dragon. Berengaria. That's what it was. Maravel and Hesperia also have them. Also, this isn't actually a Maravel dragon. It's something on another planet that's similar to one. Because I had the Beholder, all of the things in that one are actually new things that haven't been seen before, and they're explaining them by way of analogy. But yeah, Berengaria is the planet I was talking about. So, and Brentalia or Berengaria. Those are surprisingly similar names. I wonder if they originally were actually just going to use Berengaria. Huh. Mm-hmm. I am. We didn't actually see most of the dragon-like life forms in Star Trek. It's one of those things that gets pulled up sometimes, mostly in the animated stuff, because the fact that it's easier to do an animated dragon than it is to try to do a CGI gigantic monster. Anyway, though, so Corvin Gilvos were transported from Corvin. Oh, it's this planet. Oh, also, the picture is, as far as I can tell, from Discovery, not from Newground. Newground, they just kind of mentioned that it exists, and that was it. Anyway, so, moving on. Yeah, alien life forms that are, animals are actually a great option for making the world feel like it's, a sci-fi future place that's not just, people on Earth doing Earth people things. Giving it the feeling of being alien by putting some sort of weird creature in the story. Great idea. Whether or not you actually have the players, interact with the creature, it still adds flavor. It makes the story feel Star Trek, even if you don't really do anything directly. Anyways, so the whole plot with Miss Kyle was solely that she was one of Alexander's teachers. Alexander was misbehaving in school and not doing what he was supposed to. And Worf and Alexander had a chat about Alexander being, a good boy and blah, 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 blah. To be quite honest, that was a lot of exposition dumping and uh, deep character, whatever, analysis about Worf and Alexander that I don't think you would be likely to do in a TTRPG. If your characters in a TTRPG have children, maybe that would be applicable, but you know, I'm not sure how many people playing in Star Trek Adventures or a similar TTRPG would actually want to have characters with children. I mean, potentially a thing you could do, I suppose, but you know, if you do it, good. If not, you would need to find a different kind of interpersonal drama for a story like this. And that's actually kind of the whole thing, is that this is put in here solely so that we have a reason for Worf to have something other than, Romulans to fight. Something that he can't just kill and get it over with. Honestly, it was a kind of a very real thing, because a father dealing with a disobedient child is something that people can relate to in real life. Even if they're not fathers, they understand the concept. And so the whole subplot with Alexander, it's kind of a background thing for most of the episode, or I guess you could say it's a secondary plot that gets brought up whenever they need to kill a lot of time. Dr. Jadar. Now, this is a part of this that's kind of interesting, because we don't know what species he is, but he's a scientist who helped with the um, Soliton Wave Project. Also, he is said to be from a science institute on B'Elanna 3. This is literally all we know about B'Elanna 3. Yeah, yet another one of those Alien of the Week races where they get mentioned because they need to give the Alien of the Week a face and a name. Did they actually think about who the Alien of the Week actually was? No. Is this a Federation member world? And, the Doctor is just one of the members of the species that inhabits B'Elanna 3, and that B'Elanna 3 joined the Federation as a Federation member. Well, the Star Trek Star Charts book does list that B'Elanna 3 was a Federation member world. Doesn't really say much about Jadar. Is he a native of B'Elanna 3? Yeah, I don't know. Or does he just work for them? Feel free to make up your own explanation for that if you bother using this race in a story. If you're going to use the Soliton Wave plot device in a story, then, mentioning the whole B'Elanna 3 Science Institute would actually be a good idea, because of the fact that in TNG, it was those people who came up with the idea. And even if you're not actually going to be helping them, mentioning the fact that they existed, or like, say, if you're doing a Romulan campaign and it's a Romulan team using stolen research notes, just mention that they stole them from B'Elanna 3 and call it good. That would work for me. I mean, obviously there's more to it than just that, but still, And honestly, that's most of the episode. Because, again, it's like there's the whole, Worf and Alexander thing, which takes up a large chunk of the story. But That's the sort of time-killing B plot that you probably wouldn't want to have your players do. You could do some other sort of time-killing B plot, I suppose, but there's a variety of ways you could actually make the main plot interesting instead of wasting people's time with a B plot because the main plot is too slow and boring. Like, seriously, it's like having a team actually, you know, work on doing things in order to make the main plot happen. Because seriously, it's like in this episode, part of the reason why the main plot is so boring is that the crew of the Enterprise mostly just watches Dr. Jadar's team do things. Like LaForge and many other members of the crew go into detailed analysis of like, okay, so what would we have to do to the Enterprise D in order to make the Enterprise D able to survive being pushed through space on a soliton wave? Which is actually a key part of the episode, is that Geordi and Data actually do reconfigure the Enterprise D's shields to surf the soliton wave. Because the test ship was getting destroyed by it and they needed to rescue people. Yeah. Hey, you know what? That honestly works very well for an experimental propulsion technology thing. Real world experimental propulsion research often has things go horribly, deadly wrong. So, having some sort of experimental warp travel replacement thing result in a exploded experimental vessel. Hey, you know what? Fits. It fits the concept. It's a dangerous line of research. The danger, of course, being your ship explodes. One of the dangers, anyways. Anyways, though, yeah, I think that's about it for this episode. Giving players a mission related to assisting scientists with researching some sort of experimental warp travel replacement technology. Honestly, great idea. Love the idea. I don't think the Soliton wave caught on because in most forms of continuation of Star Trek The Next Generation, the Federation figures out how to make Borg transwarp gates work and figures out how to do portal technology using Borg transwarp gates as the a basis for a transwarp network. So the Federation just starts using transwarp gates to get from place to place, and thus they don't really worry about stuff. Oh, also, is that this is one of those things where this episode has several things that are in it that are just kind of like blink and you'll miss it. Like, that's a cool thing. Like the calisthenics program where they have weird monster alien type things where it's not clear if they're things that are actually real or if they're just something someone made up to have an enemy they wouldn't feel anything about fighting and would just kill it and get it over with. And something to ponder, I suppose, but nothing important. Oh, well. Anyways. Yeah. A huge chunk of this episode is taken up with Worf and Alexander doing this, that, and the other. And, oh yeah, also, the final act involves saving Alexander from something or other. And Riker has to help with that. Anyways. And that's about it. See you guys next time.